I got one there, yeah.
Nice sergeant.
I should have known that too. Okay.
Ran a DeBoer.
Ran a-
Ran a marathon. Everybody calls her Rana. Cigars and
Fellow Rotarians and guests, thank you for joining us today for an especially important meeting and program. Let's say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Lord, be with us today, 5 days following an inauguration, and you can sense the optimism in this room as we celebrate mentorship, as we celebrate what it means for this community, as we celebrate us coming together as business leaders, whether you're in the for-profit sector, not-for-profit sector, or within our city governing body. We stand here together to talk about mentorship and what it means for those who benefit from it, and how we as a community benefit from lifting others up and unlocking potential that exists in all corners of our community. Amen. Please be seated. I would like to take a moment and ask all of our guests today, whether you are from Sioux Falls or outside the community, because I know there are some that are from outside the community, to please stand and be welcome, please. And we do have guests. I'm sure we have guests from other communities, but these are the ones I know of. We do have guests from the Brookings Rotary chapter, so thank you for joining us today. Fellow Rotarians and guests, we're here to talk about Sioux 52. Sioux 52 is a shared initiative with the city of Sioux Falls. And today we are marking at least the 1-year anniversary of this important mentoring initiative. 5 short days ago, we witnessed another inauguration and a peaceful transfer of power. As historic of a day as that was, politics aside, there's something worth pointing out here today as we talk about mentorship. And no, I'm not talking about the comical Bernie Sanders memes that we see endlessly on social media or the news. I'm referring to the words written and read by inaugural poet Amanda Gorman. Miss Gorman's words struck a chord across the globe for their elegance and thoughtfulness. In fact, last Wednesday evening, as my family watched the recording of the inauguration at home together, it was her moment on the stage that most captivated the attention of all of us, including my 2 teenage boys. Over the course of my life, I have been drawn to uniquely talented individuals like Miss Gorman, and have always tried to better understand who they are, what makes them tick, and what circumstances in their life made them who they are. You may be surprised to know that 22-year-old Miss Gorman turned to writing at an early age to cope with her speech impediment. At age 14, Gorman joined Right Girl, an LA-based nonprofit organization that helps empower teenage girls through creative writing, where they experience one-on-one mentors. Throughout her high school years, Gorman found her voice by attending Right Girl's monthly workshops. By the following year, Gorman published her first book of poetry, The One for Whom Food is Not Enough. As we join here today in person or virtually, and as we seek out our own motivations, let us consider the real possibility that can come in a healthy mentor-mentee relationship. Perhaps we have our own laureate in our midst right here in the Sioux Falls region. I'd like to introduce our panelists today. We got none other than Mayor Paul Tenhaken and Rotarian Tony Burke. We got Rana, and you told me right away. Rana DeBoer,
Ran a marathon. You're a runner.
Damien Dysart. We have Dr. Jane Stavum and Matt Paulson. In addition to that, we have Tom Walsh somewhere out there in the southern part of this hemisphere. I'm going to now turn it over to Paul and Tony, who will facilitate today's important conversation.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Funny story, though. I know Tom's probably in Cabo. There's a mayor of Austin, Texas. His name's Steve Adler. And during the height of COVID, he was telling everyone not to travel. And he was really locking down a city. And he recorded a video. He was in Cabo when he did it. And it got out that he was in Cabo. And everyone calls him Cabo Steve now. So he's fighting. But Tom is openly admitting that he's in Cabo. So Tom, hope things are good down there. So thanks for joining us today for this conversation on mentoring and the Sioux 52 initiative. It is a year old now since we launched Sioux 52, and it has been a very unconventional year to try and get traffic in the world of mentorship. It's been very hard. It's been very hard because of the distance that we've had to maintain, the schools not being able to welcome in visitors and guests and junior achievement teachers and so forth. But in a lot of ways, what has happened is the need for mentors is probably higher than it's ever been as a result of this last year. So we have this interesting dichotomy in that the need is going up tremendously. We need to meet that demand with a higher supply because soon this time we're in will end. We'll be able to get back in the schools. We'll be able to get back into different organizations and meet one-on-one. And the needs that we're going to face and encounter and are encountering are pretty great. And so when we started talking about Sioux 52 a year and a half ago, I met with the downtown Rotary and we talked about the needs in our community and where this club can make an impact. And we really landed on the fact that there's no greater impact that someone can have in their community than mentoring. And I think that at that time, the discussion was, well, we want to work on maybe the cleanliness of the river or maybe a park. I mean, those are all great things, and not to discount those, but there's no greater impact that you can leave behind than how you shape and mold someone else's life and pay that forward. And I thought of it just even this past week, last past Friday, we introduced our new fire chief for the city of Sioux Falls. His name's Matt McAravey. Great guy. He's going to be a great chief. But specifically, he even talked about the impact that people have had on his life to get him to this point. And he didn't use the term mentoring. That's exactly what it was. And that guy is going to be leading public safety in Sioux Falls Fire Rescue for the next, could be up to a decade. And so what bigger impact can one have than investing in people who will be the future leaders in our community? So we're excited about that today, and I want to thank you for allowing this conversation.
Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it. And thanks for everybody for coming and everybody online. It's been a real privilege to lead the team of Rotarians and non-Rotarians that are driving this initiative. We have about 50 individuals that are engaged in the steering committee through the subgroups and also the recruiters that are going out to businesses. Obviously, it'll be a little easier as we move forward, but I can tell you it's been a really great year. We're not going to use the P word because it's been over this year, but we definitely made a lot of changes to make sure that we still are engaging in the community. And even after 1 year, we were able to engage in over 250 mentors engaged in through the Sioux 52 mentoring initiative into the programs that are ran by nonprofits. We're really, really pleased with that. We have 27 of the mentoring programs that are now aligned with the Sioux 52 initiative. And we've got a lot more businesses that we're reaching out to. And this is a major target this year. We still want to target 200 businesses to sign up by June 30th of this year. This is our day to say, hey, businesses, reach out to the Rotarians, reach out to the members of 52, reach out to our partnering organizations that are running nonprofit mentoring programs and sign up. Really, really critical. It's going to be a huge benefit to your morale in your company. It's going to increase productivity. We got lots of research to show you that bringing in mentoring within your business environment is going to be productive and is going to be beneficial to not only the community as a whole, but also you as a business. So please join us in the movement that we believe will major impact on the viability of our community. As we know, we have a recent press release of 5,100 new people to the city of Sioux Falls, which is huge, and that's not going to slow down at all. So again, we need to welcome those people in. What's interesting, you talked about the fire. Having spent 20 years in fire service, you're right. Most fire departments are 4 generations within that fire service community. And mentoring, all of them, they don't call it that. That's what is part of that culture of the fire service. Now we're bringing that to the community. So I think they're ones we need to really engage in how they do it, and really reach out to our community as well to take it forward as well. So with that being said, we've got a great group of people here in front of us today. We're excited about talking about different types of mentoring models. How do you engage with small business, medium-sized business, large business? How does the entrepreneurial community fit in? How does the school district fit in? How does our creative thinkers at Big TV fit in? How does the city fit in? And they're walking the walk. They're leading the whole. So with that being said, I'll turn it back over to the mayor, and we're going to start off with Brad.
So one of the end goals for today and for having these conversations is to get businesses like yourselves to get involved in the mentorship movement. And that can look like a lot of different things. It can be allowing your employees time off to mentor. It can be just encouraging mentorship within your organization just through active campaigns. It can be bringing in some of these organizations that are Sioux 52 partners into your organization to educate your staff and your coworkers. But someone asked me the other day, what Sioux 52, just sum it up for me. What is this about? And I said, it's the United Way of Time. And I think John Poland, yeah. I think John actually came up with that, because we at Sioux Falls know what our United Way campaigns are. We all give money, and then this organization spreads it out. The United Way spreads out the money. We don't need new nonprofits. We just need a vehicle by which to get money to nonprofits. That's what Sioux 52 is. We don't need another mentoring program. We have great programs. We need a movement to get people dispersed to those programs, and that's what this is about. So Randa DeBoer is the Chief Culture Officer for the city of Sioux Falls, and Randa's been in that role for a little over a year. And we created that role in the city because of a variety of things. One, knowing we need to invest in our employees and the 1,300 employees in the city based on all the retirements and all the succession planning that had to be done over the next 4 or 5 years. About a quarter of our workforce is slated for retirement. So there's going to be a big change in the city of Sioux Falls employee landscape. But also part of that is creating programs internally for mentorship amongst our city employees. So, Rana, maybe just talk about that. Talk about what your work has involved in terms of the succession planning and now the internal mentorship program we're working on, the VTO policy that we implemented to give employees the leeway to mentor and so forth.
Absolutely. I think I would start out by sharing with the group that we are definitely looking at mentorship as an anchor point in our culture, right? Because what is mentorship? It's that trusting relationship based on sharing. And what organization doesn't need that, right? Trust is the foundation of great performance in a team, and relationships are everything. And sharing is everything. Your teams need to share resources, time, energy, information, whether it's the daily hit or the next 3 months or the 10-year targets. So that sharing mindset based on trust and great relationships is everything to make your team tick. So with that in mind, I think the example that you've talked about in our public safety groups has really helped us to see how can we take this concept of mentoring and expand it across the whole organization, without a doubt. So to your point, we've got some groups that are doing parts and pieces of this. Now, to the mayor's point, is how do we scale that and make that part of the regular practice, if you will, through all of our departments in our entire team. So kicking off a great effort this year to really embed mentoring into our onboarding process. So with police and fire, they hook their new recruits, their cadets, up with a buddy, right? That peer that helps them navigate the system, all the ins and outs, and is there to answer those questions that you kind of feel too dumb to ask your supervisor or your peer about. So how can we do that across every team and across the whole organization? And we're really excited about that. Just think, every new employee group that comes into the city, just like you, is a cross-pollination of a whole bunch of different departments together. And the ability for them to create relationships and mentor each other, then step back into their teams and have a mentor in that space. Like, we're just building some great relationships and great ways that people can relate and connect, because community is huge. It's huge. So that's one great piece that we're stepping into. And also tomorrow, we are going to launch our first ever citywide employee mentoring program called The Path. Can I read you the tagline, please? Can I? It's so good. Okay, here it goes. Developing a relationship of trust and learning, creating a path for reaching new heights in work and life. Boom. Yay! Thank you. We're very excited. So we want to build that across the whole employee life cycle, right? From onboarding all the way to the legacy years. So as we're really instilling some great practices in succession planning, we're also looking to those long-term employees and how can they mentor back? Because you guys know this, we have been known as a career-based employer. We have people leaving our organization that have been with us for a long time. And all of that incredible goods up in their head is not in an SOP. You don't find that in a manual somewhere. That comes through that relationship and that storytelling and conversations. So how do we hook up as we identify those really important positions that are stepping away? How do we hook them up with those legacy employees to tell those stories? And then lastly, I think I would share with you that mentoring is an absolute in every leadership development program that we have at the city. We make sure that in each of those programs that mentor, that those participants are hooked up with a mentor, either internal or external.
So Rana's hitting on a couple important points, but one thing I want to highlight, it's kind of the overall theme, is a lot of times when we talk about mentorship, we go right to youth and right to kids. Mm-hmm. And mentorship takes so many forms, and whether that's immigrant business owners who need a mentor, whether that's men and women coming out of the pen who need help reacclimating to life, they need a mentor, whether it's your new hires, with workforce being the challenge we have, the more that you can make those first 6 months a success for your new hire, the more likely they are to stay there. And so creating an internal mentorship program just for those employees is so critical. So these guys are all going to touch on different forms that mentoring can take. But obviously, we have some very great programs as well. This is a city program, the PATH program that we're implementing. But between LSS and teammates and community outreach and so many others, we have a lot of other programs as well if you want to spread your wings outside of, your business or your organization and do that.
So we should mention VTO.
Talk about VTO. That's what I was just going to ask you about.
Absolutely. Volunteer time off. So not only internal, right, but we need our people developing and being present in our community as well. So that 8 hours of time each year that they can go out and be a part of the community and growing and enriching the lives in whatever, program or place that they desire, that they want to put their energy. So really creating the conditions, you guys, right? Just how do you create the conditions to be successful, to adopt and instill and grow that mentoring mindset? So I meant to get the hours that we've actually put into that so far, but our employees are just really excited that they can use their time to go be and grow others in the community in those places that they really enjoy. So that's a tremendous engagement opportunity and creates a really valuable employee experience because it's an investment in them. You're showing how much you care, and it's an investment in them.
Thanks, Rana.
Yeah.
Tony, let's hear from Tamian.
Actually, before that, it's interesting about the volunteer time off. And, there's definitely some perceptions out there that it's a waste of time, right? From an employer's perspective. And the reality is, research is out there that if you allow that to happen, your employees are going to be more productive. They're going to feel more valued at work. They're going to get more out of it. And actually, let's be real. if we're not engaging in different ways, shapes, or forms, there's probably lots of times that we're standing around the water cooler, right? That we're probably wasting that hour. So why not spend that time on investing in somebody else? And, I think it's just great. And as we talk about that with all business leaders, you're not going to lose productivity. You're going to gain productivity, and you're going to gain a morale boost, and you're actually going to maybe differentiate yourself from other businesses that are not doing it, and you're going to keep those people longer, which is a great segue to talk to Tamian. So Tamian with Think 3D and Thinker Studios. Tamian has been a major player in this community. We all know him and Vonnie have done tremendous work in our communities. And I think one of the things that Tamian and I have talked about over the last year or so is we are bringing in lots of mentors, but there could be a potential bottleneck. And it's because we want to make sure we encourage the individuals that are looking for that support to come forward as well. And that takes a lot of work. That's not just myself going into a community and saying, hey, you should be a mentee. There's all these great mentors out there. So we want to explore with Tamian a little bit about how do we reach all of our neighborhoods, every single part of our community, and what is Leaders of Tomorrow doing to help that as we move forward, and what are the long-term impacts and outcomes. So Tamian, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. For me, again, I use the word that Jason was talking about, potential. When we think about our city, 50 to 100 new people to this community, we're growing, and that's a huge number to have. But equally, as we know, there's 100+ languages being spoken in our city, and we also know that there's a huge gap in terms of diversity, in terms of leadership, and on boards and various things like that. So how do we start to close that gap? Part of the premise of Leaders of Tomorrow was, where's that bench? How do we build that bench and accelerate the bench that is ready to step into these roles? We have a lot of organizations who reach out and ask us those questions. We want to diversify. Who do you have? And we know that pool doesn't go as deep as we'd like. So how do we accelerate that? Because we need reinforcements. We talk about Sioux 52. We're in progress, but it's not where we want to be, right? We know we can always use more mentors. So how do we accelerate that? How do we accelerate the process? And for us, this is one of those things where with Leaders of Tomorrow, we're producing about 100 graduates to our program every single year. And as we think about mentorship, so it's a 12-week program, but on the other side of the 12 weeks, there's folks coming out hungry asking, what's next? What do I do now? And Vonnie and myself are just two guys, and we don't have the time to handle all that mentoring, if you would, by ourselves. And so we asked ourselves, how do we build a multiplier model? So again, though traditional mentorship is great, there's not a single person that doesn't deserve to have a mentor. Me personally, I can relate to the side. I never had a direct mentor. And so I asked myself, how do we get reinforcements to that? So our mentorship multiplier model really is built off the premise of that 1-to-5 ratio, or again, take 2 mentors and get into groups of maybe 8 to 10. Because as we asked ourselves the question, the challenge that you often have within a traditional mentorship relationship, let's say you spend 1 hour a week with an individual, which is a great investment, but we're all have a lot of things going on in our lives. You're challenged as a mentor to say, how do you make a significant impact in this young person's life 1 hour compared to 167 hours when you're dealing with the same friend groups and the different environments? And so we're trying to instill confidence in people. But when you get into that 1-to-5 ratio, because if you we look at it from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, most people, if you don't have those first 2 rungs of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, water, shelter, safety, you can forget about sense of belonging, you can forget about self-esteem, and you definitely can forget about self-actualization. But what we saw was, if you can get them into those 1-to-5 ratios, if you can mentor a small group, now within that group, they build their own sense of a belonging. They build this own small micro community that they can lean on each other. Even if the mentor had come from a background where maybe I didn't have growing up, but because they're now in a position of success, for that mentee, it's often hard for them to close that gap. And there's too much difference between what you're telling me and where I'm at today. But walking through that with a group, they see that they're in the process together. And along the way, one of the things that we're terrible at as a society is measuring our wins. We often, I call it a Super Bowl society. We only often want to celebrate the wins when it's the momentous thing, but we have to celebrate the daily wins, just simply doing the work. When you're in a group setting, when that person next to me is getting wins along the way, that helps fuel my sense of self-esteem. That helps get me to that place of self-actualization. And so in that mentorship multiplier model, we're asking, how can we accelerate the efforts of a few and help to explode out into the community as we start to talk about and getting into the school system and getting into those younger ages where we know it's even more pivotal for that to happen. The other side of it, when I think about multiplier, what happens when you get the right mentee who's ready for it with the right mentor, right? Again, no mentee, every mentee deserves the time and space, but there's a couple gentlemen in the room that I want to use as an example. What happens when you take a Jack Marsh and a Terry Liggins and you pair them up? You take, most of you might probably know who Terry Liggins is. He's a multiplier. Because he was ready at the right place in his time and got the right mentor, that helps accelerate their impact on our community. And so through this process, how do you start to get that cream that rises to the top, if you would? You get the right mentor with the right mentee at the right time, that becomes a multiplier.
David, can you speak a little bit more to how do we get into all aspects of our neighborhoods? How do we get to all corners of our neighborhoods to really embrace what we're trying to do here? As I mentioned, you know, I could go into every single neighborhood, but that doesn't really mean much. How do we do that?
I think it's important, as well intended as we all are. I'll give you an example. I was talking with a young gentleman who went through our Leaders of Tomorrow program, and he was sharing with me his experience as an immigrant refugee. Had spent 10 years from ages 5 to 15 in an Ethiopian refugee camp. And his family had been in Sioux Falls now for 10 years. And I asked him the question, I said, at what point did your family feel secure? They had been here for 10 years and he had 3 brothers and both parents. And he thought about it for a second and he said, probably about 2 years ago. And that really hurt my heart. I'm born and raised in Sioux Falls. And so here I had to ask myself this question in our community, right? What pockets of people that are coming to our community, 5,100 coming in every single year, how many of these families, how many of these individuals don't feel that basic security, right? Again, I grew up probably upper, lower class, lower middle class. We got evicted before, but I always had a sense that we always had a place to go. Never really feared that type of stuff. And so if we don't start to bridge those impediments, how many people don't aspire for or don't start to reach, don't believe that potential is available for them? And so how do we reach these groups? I believe in the law of proximity. No matter how well intended as we are as individuals, as community leaders, they need more people that look like them. This young gentleman in particular, he first had his first seedling of believing in himself when there was another gentleman who was from a different African country, but he saw him in his public speaking space. And it wasn't until he saw that gentleman that said, I too can follow in those footsteps. And so law of proximity simply states, again, if you don't see someone that looks like you, who comes from the similar background, how are they truly going to believe to step into that space? And so again, as we look across our city and start to grab those who are already in the right position, but then build them up, give them a process, give them a methodology of how they can grow themselves, because we believe that the secret of success is through self-discovery. And oftentimes, again, in traditional mentorship, that's often a long road. So if we can accelerate it through a specific program or a specific process, once they've been through that process, they in turn can turn back around and reach down and help others who too are ready. And so how do we start to get those folks to broaden out the diversity of folks who are involved in these type of programs, which is one of the aims of Leaders of Tomorrow and how we view mentorship.
Tamian, thank you. Great stuff. Let's jump over to Tom Walsh. If Tom's with us online. Tom, thanks for joining us remotely today. We got full house here. Really appreciate you making this work. So I want to start by maybe having you, Tom, unpack your heart for kids and for mentoring in this community. Because if you know Tom, and a lot of you do, the guy has just a heart like a lion. And when Tom decides to do something, you just probably should get out of the way because it's going to happen. And when he was introduced to the Teammates program, I know through Coach Osborne and others, he said, we got to bring this to Sioux Falls. So I'd love for you to unpack how this came to be, the Teammates program, what it is, how it came to Sioux Falls, and kind of your hope and vision for what that becomes in our community.
Sure. Well, first off, I think every one of us has had somebody take us under their wings and help us succeed, a positive role model. And there's no doubt that every child needs a positive adult relationship. And when I look back at, as far as I was oldest of 8 kids, and We have 4 kids and 9 grandkids, and we're blessed to have them here in Sioux Falls. But the relationships that develop over this, it's one of the benefits of mentoring is you get more out of it than the mentoree. It makes you a better person, and it makes everyone around you a better person. So back in 1975, when we started Burger King, we had probably 400 plus people apply for it, and a lot of them were first-time job seekers. And to get teenagers or kids proficient on making Whoppers or working on drive-through or the safety issues, you have to personally get involved with them. And that's the same thing with all long-term success. It's the basis of the relationship. So, through our Burger Kings, 80% of our management started as hourly team member, and we kept investing them. And our average restaurant manager was with us 28 years and assistant managers 16 years. And that doesn't happen by accident. It's by being involved and taking a responsibility for the growth of those persons. Back in 2019, I was at a school board meeting, and they were doing some statistics. Back in 1990, about 4% of the student population was non-traditional. Currently, it's over 40%. And if we don't figure out a way how to get these kids and their families involved and feeling included in our community, in the American dream, we're going to have a lot of problems for our kids and grandkids. So teammates, Tom Osborne has been a friend for a few years, and he started this program back in 1991. And one of the key things about teammates is that over 94% of the kids that participate in the mentoring program graduate from high school. And if you don't graduate from high school, you're 7 times more likely to live a life of poverty, more likely to be involved in drugs and crime and a lot of bad stuff. I think it's something like 61% of the prison population are high school dropouts. So it's critical to get these relationships and get these kids, like Amy said, out at McGovern, over 60% of the kids are non-traditional. And if they don't feel safe after 8 years, they're gonna find some security, whether it's in gangs or whatever. So if we can provide a positive relationship for these kids, all kids, I think we can really make a difference in their life and a difference in our community.
Something really important, that is the fact that the last year, we don't run from this, our crime has gone up in the city, and it's gone up in our community, and specifically our youth crime has gone up in this city, in this community. And we have youth who, it's just very evident, have not been invested in, have absent home lives, and have a lot of time on their hands. And so when we started Sioux 52, I think sometimes people see crime and they see, all right, Mayor, what are you we need more cops, and how are we going to tackle this crime wave? And it's like, listen, we're doing things from the enforcement side, but if you want to change the kid at 16, you got to start when he's 9, all right? And it's a long game. It's a long game that we have to play on some of these things. So, Tom, if you can, and I hope I'm not getting too personal with you here, but you seem like a guy that is starting to move from success to significance, in that you've had a lot of success in business, and now you're looking at programs like Teammates and the Great Life Cares Foundation and the YMCA downtown, and you're just involved in so many things to try and make a legacy and leave a mark on youth in our community, and it's noticed by so many. How has this impacted you personally? How has this topic of youth and kids impacted you personally as a man and a businessman and a husband, father?
And like I said before, when you've been blessed with much, you ought to do much. And you get more out of what you do for other people than the recipients. It makes you better, makes everybody better. But I started with very little, and my relationships, watching, seeing my people succeed and be successful. Like probably 20 of the restaurants we sold were to the people running them. They've gone on, they graduate from high school. They've got a career that they can get into any kind of hospitality business. The family thing is, we try really create a culture of caring, committed people, and it's something that with teammates, we do virtual mentoring with a third grade class with about 20 kids for the last couple of weeks. With Great Life, with Lutheran Social Services, their program they have is called Climb, and it's the old Big Brothers Big Sisters. But we've given them cards that they can take their mentoree and go to any staff Great Life facility to shoot hoops or play golf or work out or whatever. So seeing people succeed, and especially young people, is probably one of the greatest joys you can have. And so it's ball.
Yeah, I agree, man. And you know what? You can do all the business deals you want in the world, but there is nothing more satisfying than when you see someone you feel like you had a small part in get to the next rung on that ladder. It's incredibly, it's an incredible feeling. I actually had that recently with a young guy that I've been meeting with, who's trying to find his career path, and he's bouncing a couple of jobs, and he's got a girlfriend that moved out of state, and he's thinking about following her out of state. And he's an incredible employee that we want to keep in this community, and opened a door for him at a company and put in a good word, and he got the job, and he's 1 week in and he's loving it. And man, that's just a great feeling when all right, we're going to keep that young guy here. Now he's probably going to propose to his girlfriend. She's going to move back here. So I got my workforce development hat on and all this, but it just it's a neat feeling. So let's talk to Dr. Stavum.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Tom. Dr. Stavum, welcome. It's been great having you in our community. One thing we noticed about you right away is that you've been a huge champion for mentoring, not only here, but throughout your whole career. And we've heard it from a lot of your leadership staff that a lot of times you open your meetings of what are we doing in the field of mentoring before they even mention to you about and ask about what they want to do for mentoring, especially when it came to COVID and wanting to look at a different model to get help for the students. So let's walk through us your desire and your passion for mentoring and your why is this so important, not only for the students, but as the community as a whole.
Well, first of all, we're just so grateful for everybody who's been a mentor and continues to, because one of the things is it's changed so drastically this year that we want everybody to hang on through this. And we have just started some virtual mentoring. It's been wildly successful. And we appreciate people persevering to kind of try that out. And the ones who were in the room when we first did this said it was just so amazing to see the kids and their response. They were so glad to see their mentors and so excited. It's been said that for people to be happy, they need three things. They need something to get up for in the morning, something to do. They need someone to love or something to care about, and they need something to look forward to. And mentoring captures all of those. And when you think about one of the best ways to mentor, of course, kids have to come to mind. I'm a little bit biased. I think that's one of the best scenarios because all you have to really do is show up. You don't have to prepare anything. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to do anything but be there. And we want people to take that time just to be there. Now, I know I'm a teammate, a longtime mentor, and some weeks when I showed up with my mentee, she was not so talkative. So we started out shooting hoops, and I pretended to be a basketball expert because she, as a fifth grader, was sure she was headed for the WNBA. To do that, though, it meant that the PE teacher in that school had to give me half of his gym while he was teaching class, and he let me do that. And so that's how our relationship started. Some weeks when I showed up, she would sit with her head down and barely talk. but I showed up. Another week, she might tell me to fire her teacher as that teacher's walking by. And I would let her know that probably wasn't going to happen, and she would think that everybody was against her. Didn't matter, though, from week to week. I didn't know, but what I knew was important was showing up for her. And that's what we ask of adults when it comes to mentoring kids. They need a significant adult who's in their corner, who's interested in what they're doing, who's willing to just listen and be an ear without having to fix anything, and they know somebody cares about them and notices them. As human beings, like Damien said, we have a Maslow's hierarchical needs, and one of the most pivotal things for a kid is that somebody just notices them. They know who they are, they know what they're interested in, and they know who they are as a person. And then if there's some of those other wonderful things that go along with it, like common interests or helping them with a pathway to something that they want to do as an adult, all of that will fall into place. It doesn't have to be perfect when you start. One of the best things that I think is also great when you start with a mentee, particularly if you do in elementary schools, you get to walk with them through that whole journey through middle and high school. One of my mentees just had a new baby, so I feel a little bit like a surrogate grandma. Was the first baby born in Lincoln, Nebraska after the new year. But that's covered a lot of span with her from 5th grade in the gym to now as a young adult with her own family. And we'll be friends forever. And she knows above all that I'm there no matter what. And that's what we ask of our adults, is that you show up and you're there no matter what. Benefits are manyfold. There were a lot of times where she might not have gotten an assignment done or might have skipped school one extra day, but she knew I was going to show up that day. And as the assistant superintendent at that time, it was probably going to be known if she was absent one way or the other. Somebody would let me know. And so it kept her showing up. And that's one of the things. If they know you're coming on that day, they may just show up when they might not have gone to school that day. It can be that for a lot of other reasons too. But you get to establish a relationship with them, and that's the mutual benefit part of it. Is it's good for the student, but it's also a way for an adult to have a relationship that's beneficial to you. I have another person in my life to love and care for the rest of my lifetime, and hope to add to that. We really encourage our employees to be mentors if they can find that time during their workday. Of course, our teachers are with kids mentoring them all day. But we let people go and do that. It's important. My assistant just saw her mentee virtually last week, and she was so excited. We also are looking as an organization of how do we do that adult to adult. We have a good program for our beginning teachers. They have a mentor who walks with them through that new teacher experience. But we've looked at how do we do that with our maintenance staff? How do we do that with our EAs so that everybody has a significant adult to mentor them through their work role? The other thing that I wanted to just touch on with what Rana said earlier is one of the things that we're thinking about too is how do we mentor people after this profession? You often see organizations do a great job of mentoring people into a role and learning that position. But when that time comes that you're going to enter a new stage of life, how do we do that? If you're an educator, you go from scheduling every last minute of your day and lots of people needing you every minute of that day to the next day literally having no schedule and nobody needing you in that same way. And that's a big leap. And so we're thinking about how do we even mentor as you then leave a profession or go to a new phase. So I'm the biggest advocate there is. We want everybody to stay connected. JA, LSS, teammates, and other things that we can still dream up. Lunch Buddies was part of a former district that I was in, but it's the connection that matters.
Thanks, Dr. Saban. When you talk about those principles of youth, really those principles you're talking about coming alongside somebody through their life, it doesn't matter the age. It really is about being that trusted relationship that Rana mentioned, right?
Absolutely.
So what's interesting, we've had to do a lot of changes this year. Specifically, we've talked on a little bit about virtual mentoring, and we're piloting that now. We're working with the nonprofits to do that work. One ask we have of individuals is that we need some leadership, administrative volunteers as well. Right now, the teachers, as we know, are busting at the seams as far as their workload is concerned. And we really want people to come and help us at the school for 2.5 hours on a Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, kind of facilitate that. So not only now will you have a relationship with one student, you could have a relationship with 5, 10, 15, 20 students. So please consider that, because we need to get those people in their place really quickly. We do have to go through the Sioux Falls School District process, which is critically important to protect our kids. But we really want those administrative volunteer leaders to jump on board and get engaged with that, because that's really, you talk about the multiplier that Tamian mentioned. That's a multiplier we can do right now and get more students back into mentoring. And I think what's also important, and maybe you could speak to this when I finish my statement, but Jack Morris has been a longtime friend. His name's been mentioned already today. And I can probably say this, Jack, comfortably, that you were probably a little resistant at first about this virtual Zoom kind of stuff. And I remember having coffee with Jack on Zoom, and what he said to me was, it's actually really rich, really, really rich to do this work virtually as well. And I think the other benefit as our city grows, continues to grow, is we're having discussions with LSS and teammates and JA and the like, is that for individuals that want to mentor, if you've got to go to the far side of the city, that could be a 30-minute drive. Or if you can just jump online and get on for 40 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, you've just saved yourself an hour of work time as well. So I think virtual is here to stay, and we're hoping it's here to stay. So I don't know if you want to comment a little bit more about that, about maybe the long-term benefits of doing virtual mentoring for the mentors and the mentees.
Yeah, some of the things we've talked about is what is the best that we want to keep that kind of emerged because of COVID, and what is some of the things that we want to let go. And that virtual opportunity is one that's probably going to be an option, hopefully for the long term, or some combination of the two. But to do that, it took, first of all, making sure that we could get the technology working and have that right. And then the second thing is making sure that it's that safe environment. Not that we don't trust people, but it's just a good safeguard for both the mentor and the mentee, which means having somebody near but not invading in that conversation. So it was, how do we do a private conversation with also a level of oversight that makes it something that's acceptable to everybody. And so we figured out how to do that. And so I think if we can continue to grow that, we see the success stories might look different at different levels of what works, and it might look different with each individual match. We might have a student who's very talkative in person, but when they get on Zoom, it just doesn't work quite the same way. We need to adjust. So I think flexibility, adaptability, and you're right, not having to travel, we're finding that with meetings and other things, and I think now our mentor setups is something that we'll be able to incorporate that. But you're right, we do need everybody to step up and help with that, and make sure that if your employer needs to give you a quiet space, that they're willing to find the right location or help a little bit with the technology, and we're doing that on our end as well with our partners. So it's been a really good development.
One point, if I may make, this Zoom will allow a lot of us snowbirds to continue our relationship. So that's a huge
point.
And traffic is not that bad to get across town, Tony.
I was going to say something.
You always got to get a dig in there. Come on. Before I talk to Matt Paulson, Matt's the CEO and founder of Market Beat, I want to share a story because it relates to what Matt and I are going to talk about. Some of you may have heard this story from me, but I met with an Eritrean business owner. This was about maybe 6-8 months ago now. It was, I think, September. Came to my office, and I have these open office hours in my office every first Friday of every month, and anybody can sign up to meet with me about a topic, and I never know what's going to come in the door. And this gentleman talked to me about his desire to start a restaurant, and he went out on his own. He bought a restaurant, the equipment, the liquor license, everything from someone else who was closing down the restaurant to start his business, and he paid $32,000 for the liquor license itself. And anyone in the bar business knows he got a steal. Well, what he bought was a beer and wine license, and he got fleeced by this guy. And this Eritrean gentleman was just basically coming to meet with me to say, I need someone to help me learn how to do business here. And he had basically had bankrupted himself as a result of that transaction. And he still had this desire to start his own business. So the point of that story is a very non-traditional mentorship type of relationship. But there's a gentleman who wants to start a business. He needs to know how to pay sales tax, how to join the chamber. He needs someone to bring him to a mixer. He needs someone to make this room not so homogenous and, bring him along to that. I mean, those sorts of opportunities exist to mentor businesses and entrepreneurs. So Matt, you've been really involved in our entrepreneurial community through a lot of different programs and through work at Zeal. I see there's some folks from Zeal here. Tell me about the importance of business mentorship, especially for businesses that are maybe just starting out and trying to find a niche or a lane for the product or their service in our community.
So there are kind of two unique challenges with entrepreneurship that you don't see in other lines of work. If you want to be a fireman, you know that you need to put out the fire and somebody will train you exactly how to do that. In the business world, when you start a small business, you know what the result is. You need to make some money, but you really have no idea how to get from zero to having a profitable business. And you just kind of have to figure it out yourself. The other reality of it is it's a pretty lonely thing to start a business because you face challenges and you can't really relate to your employees. Like, you don't want to say, I don't know if I can make payroll next week. That's probably not something you want to share with people that are working for you. So kind of the reality of like the loneliness and also just the unclear path to success, it leads to a lot of uncertainty among small business owners. And it leads to this thing called imposter syndrome, where you feel like you're not good enough, or you don't have the right skills, or you're not working hard enough, or you just don't know what you're doing. And you think, I'm not an entrepreneur because I don't have it figured out yet. And one thing that I've kind of learned over the years is that, as a mentor and people that mentor small businesses, like, you don't really need to have the answer for people. You just need to encourage them to keep going because they'll figure it out themselves. To share with somebody that, I was there, I was making 10 grand a year when I first started and didn't know how to grow it from there. I had all sorts of problems. I got sued once, lots of problems. And for people to be able to relate to that and say, oh, you were there, now you're here. Someday I'll get there too. I just don't know how. That's really encouraging to people that are getting started. And then you can also just help them avoid a lot of mistakes. Like when I was first getting started, I didn't know that as an internet business that I needed to collect sales tax. And it turns out I did, of course. So I had to do like 3 years of back sales tax to fix that. And eventually it did get fixed. But now as a, yes, I try. One of the things I do is I'm a mentor for SCORE, which is a network of business owner volunteers that are willing to make time available for new business owners that have questions. And like this, I get the same call every month. I'm starting a business. I need to make sure I've got all the legal and tax stuff set up right. So I walk them through the checklist. Have you made your LLC or your legal entity, whatever that's going to look like? You have a sales tax license. Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? Just to kind of make sure they have their ducks in a row. And I can kind of help make sure that the next guy or the next gal or the next person doesn't make that mistake that I made. So I might not know how to make their business successful, but I can help them avoid some of the headaches that I ran into.
Yeah, great points. And that's where an organization like Zeal is beneficial, because it creates a community of like-minded people who are all maybe experiencing some of the same challenges. The problem that you have sometimes in a situation like that is not everyone wants to admit the challenges they're having. So a one-on-one relationship, they'll get a lot more intimate, and the chamber doesn't highlight businesses that go bankrupt. They highlight the ones that do well. And there's a whole bunch of struggles that business owners go through before they get that big win. So your business, Market Beat, you're a Sioux 52 partner, which means you've signed up to say, hey, we're going to encourage mentorship in our workplace, encourage our employees to get involved in mentorship. Tell me why you guys did that, what that looks like at Market Beat.
Yeah, so when that opportunity presented itself, I kind of talked to each employee, and we only have 9 people, so it was really easy, and said, hey, do you do any kind of mentoring? If so, what? And 3 people were already doing mentoring. I mentor small businesses. My employee, Will Bushy, goes into JDC, the Juvenile Detention Center, and does stuff with the kids there. And then a gal named Rebecca, who works for me, has done some mentoring in schools and mentoring of like new immigrant families in town. And then I talked to the other people and said, hey, is this something you'd want to do? And the answer was really yes across the board. So I thought, mentoring is already kind of part of our culture. Let's formalize this and enable people to mentor in a way that, is authentic to them. I feel like all of us have our own kind of superpowers, and, somebody might be well equipped to mentor kids. Other people might be well equipped to mentor, whoever. So let's create the space to do that and encourage people to do that within, our culture of the company. So we quickly adopted a policy that said, hey, any 2 hours a month that you want to go do mentoring, any way that you want to, go ahead and do it. And then we've had a couple people start doing mentorships in schools and just whatever that looks like for them. And I thought, well, we're 9 people, 6 of us are in Sioux Falls. What else can we do? And then the opportunity presented itself to kind of be the sponsor for the next Leaders of Tomorrow program. So Market Beat is going to be the kind of cover the cost of the next class of Leaders of Tomorrow. And, we're always looking for new ways to encourage mentorship. And I don't know what that looks like, but there have been a lot of people that have mentored, me off and on throughout the years. And, I've tried to reciprocate that with new people. And we really wanted to ingrain mentoring in the culture of our company and just kind of encourage that in our community.
Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah, give that applause. So that does kind of lead us to why we're here and kind of an ask that we have of you all today. And so Tony and I will kind of tag team this, but I want to first highlight the 211 table back there, 211 Helpline Center. Will you guys stand up, please? So, all right. So 211 Helpline Center is just an incredible asset in our community. And they're ones who, whenever we come up with an idea, it seems like they need to be the tip of the spear on it. And they always throw their hands up and say, yes, how can we help? But they have become an entry point for mentorship. So they will field phone calls of people who want to mentor. So some people don't want to go online and fill out a form. So you can just call 211, talk about who you are and what your skills are, and they'll connect you with an organization that could use your skill set. But you can also go to sioux52.org and answer a few questions. And, there's people who aren't comfortable with kids or aren't comfortable with felons or aren't comfortable with addicts. And so they want to get in the lane where they feel they can have the most impact. And so that's the goal of the initiative, is how do we get as many people involved in different mentorship programs as possible? Called Sioux 52. There's 52 weeks in a year. Sure, it would be great if you commit to mentoring every week. Could be an hour a week. We set a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal of having 5,200 new mentors, net new mentors by 2026 in our community. It's a very broad, lofty goal, but as I stated earlier, when we grow by 5,000 people a year, and I think it's probably going to be north of that once the census numbers come out, those are people, there's a good chunk of that people that need help and need mentorship in our city, in our community. And so that's what we're asking of the groups here. Get your business involved, get yourself involved, get your family involved. It's easy to stroke a check. It's one of the easiest things to do, is just stroke a check, say, did my part, gave $100 to the United Way. I'm helping the community. Keep giving to United Way. But the hard part to do is say, I'm going to give an hour a week. Then we're like, whoa. That's my time. That's precious. I have a family. I have young kids. I have a busy job. Okay. I have hobbies. I like to golf. I have all these other things. That's where the rubber hits the road, is when you really commit to your time. And that's what we're really asking about today.
Thanks, Mayor. And just to kind of dovetail into that part of the conversation, certainly if you have questions, come on up now. We're going to take some questions from the group. And if there's any online, just a few things to add to what Mayor Tenhaken said. The reason we decided to catch that BHAG, but then the reason we decided to kind of change a little bit, is we know that doesn't necessarily always work for everybody 1 hour a week. But that goal is set for the very purposeful reason, so we can measure some of our successes. There's other opportunities with some of the programs that you could do it once a year for a week, or you could do a weekend, or you could do an evening thing or something else. So that's why we really said we want to do all mentoring models. We want to make it accessible to everybody, no matter what your family unit looks like, no matter what your time looks like. Just give some time back. That's critically important. The other thing what's happening to nonprofit organizations mentoring programs to sign up with 211. One of the things we've heard from a lot of the nonprofits, when budgets are tight, the first thing that gets cut is what? It's the marketing and advertising budget. We've got some great folks here within this Sioux 52 initiative, including our partner at Dakota News Now, who does a monthly Rotary mentoring moment. We have great social media partners as well. We can help with that marketing and advertising. We're not a program. We're never going to be a program. The idea is that we're here to amplify the importance of mentoring. So if you're not a Sioux 52 partner and you're a nonprofit organization that has mentoring programs, go to 211, give them a call, go online and sign up. It's critically important. The more of us that come together, we can continue to amplify the importance of mentoring across our community. We've got some friends here from Brookings. They're seeing the work we're doing online and on television and radio. They're seeing the Sioux 52. So it's critically important as a nonprofit that runs a program, sign up and join this movement. The other piece is the 520 businesses. You know, it is critically important. We've targeted 200 new businesses to sign on by June 30. We've not laid off the gas pedal despite COVID, and we think it's critically important for our business to community. So again, same as the nonprofit mentoring programs, call 211, sign in to their website and register yourself as a business to be part of this program. And we have about 40 recruiters that'll come and meet with you, whether Zoom or on the phone or in person, just to have a conversation of how do you bring this mentoring into your business. We heard from a small business owner that was able to do it. So if a small business owner was able to do it, medium-sized business, large, see the city doing it. We all can find a way to do it. It just has to fit into your matrix of how you run your business. So it's critically, critically important. So there is pledge forms at the back. If you want more information, if you're a business or nonprofit leader here, please up and we'll follow up with you in the next couple of weeks. But with that said, is there any questions for this group? Can we give this group a round of applause, please? So with that said, is there any questions of this group or any questions for the mayor pertaining to Sioux 52? Good, Terry. Step up. Come on up. Dan, does he need a mic?
Typically, when I ask a question or when I get into an event like this, I listen really closely. I take great notes, and then I ask a really, really, really hard question. Because for me, in my mind, I'm always trying to look for how can we improve? Where are the gaps to get better? Certainly, there's space for affirmation, but there's always the biggest space in the room was always the room for improvement. I'm going to tell you, I listened to this presentation, and the gaps are filled. I just want to really express a big thank you to you, Mayor, for lifting up this initiative. Tony for driving the Sioux 52 and putting together this panel that really covered the gaps that I'm always listening for to see if we are as a community really considering and looking for and trying to reach all people. So there's a huge gratitude that I have in that, and a thank you and a me being impressed, which I'm not easily impressed. I've been through a lot. I've seen a lot. I don't just give credit or kudos where it's not due. And to really see this lineup, seeing the intendant and everyone else again, really fills the gaps. So I just want to say thank you for that. I also want to mention the fact that, Mayor, when you talk about youth and a spike in crime, and Tony, I believe you were speaking to as well, Tamian, the growth of diversity, non-traditional students, Tom was talking about that. That's where my heart is at. When it comes to mentorship and how we see it at Hurdle Life is really mentorship in the margins. There's so much amazing stuff that's happening in schools and business, but there's margins in our community that people don't reach and they're afraid to go into. They don't have the confidence, they don't have the courage, they don't have the insight to really do it in a way that allows for those margins to really come forward, that they can be included. And that's our entire design at the Hurdle Life Coach. It's peer supported, it's trauma informed, and it's minority led. And so what I wanted to do with this moment is actually give the first public recognition and thank you to the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation, because we created a program called Change. It stands for Challenging Historically Accepted Notions for Greater Expectations. We've been doing this work for an entire year with stakeholders, with peers, friends, myself, my team. And we designed this program and we've lifted it up that asks for support to come alongside that we can open the doors in April. And just this week, the team at the Area Community Foundation granted us $25,000 to open up that program for mentorship in the margins. And I want to thank Andy and his team for doing that. In addition to Andy, our friends at First Premier Bank have come alongside of us as well with a gift of $5,000. Thank you, Dave Rosenboom. Please thank Dave as well and First Premier Bank. And you wouldn't know this, and he doesn't like this. This is not why he gives, but Matt Paulson gave first before any of the other gifts came along. I walked into his office to give him a credit for something he was doing, and I walked out of there with a commitment for $10,000. So thank you, Matt Paulson, as well. Please thank him. And that type of faith and confidence is what fires up a guy like me to keep doing the work. We talk about it being a multiplier. I can give everyone in this room my word that I'm going to keep being who I am. I'm going to honor the investment of my mentor, Jack. Taman is a very close advisor to me as well. And with that, with those dollars, with that support, we will reach into the margins and we will multiply the impact that has been placed upon my life into the margins of our diverse communities. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Terry. Any other questions, comments? While you guys are pondering that, we got to, yep, you bet.
Thank you. I'm just a guest, so I don't want to be too presumptuous, but I did come because I'm so excited about Sioux 52. And just like Terry said, you answered a lot of the questions about how the businesses get involved and who the people are that we're looking to mentor. And one thing that I didn't hear answered was what is the structure for finding out where all the opportunities are for mentoring? Because I always wonder, well, this group needs mentors. Do they know about this group? Is that through the 211 helpline, or is there another structure, and where can people go to be added to that group or to find out those answers?
Thanks for that. Yeah, we've talked a lot about 211, and as we evolved into this initiative, it was obvious they're the universal connection point. So when we talk about encouraging the nonprofits that run mentoring programs, we need them to plug into 211. When we talk about businesses that are also interested in getting involved with Sioux 52, we need the businesses to plug into 211. 211 is the universal connection point. Again, I'll say it again, universal connection point to match everybody up. The other thing we talked about as there's follow-up. Sometimes things slip through the cracks, people get busy. So if there's not an opportunity with one organization at that point in time, they can turn around and say, okay, let's move to another organization until they're ready. That's the benefit of having somebody sitting in the middle, connecting the dots from the businesses to the nonprofits. If they don't have space right now, a match for you right now, we can move you to another organization that has a need. So again, we can't encourage enough that the nonprofits that run mentoring programs need to sign up, join this movement for the greater good of the whole city and the greater Sioux Falls area, and have the businesses join in as well, because that's your point of contact. That's your universal connection point.
It also just removes the competitiveness that can sometimes exist in nonprofits. So they're like, well, am I competing with, no, we're just trying to funnel more people to you. We're not creating a new program. We're just trying to be an entry point through 211 to get more eyeballs on your program.
So just one more thing that hopefully within the next year we'll be rolling out, and we've all here in this years that have been focusing on this initiative, is we're talking the outcome. We're working very closely with several of the nonprofits to define what that outcome is. Now you say, by an outcome, well, we talk outcome. So we comes across. We've heard from JA. They've got an interesting stat that if you mentor with JA and you're an alumni, they surveyed their alumni nationally, I believe it was, And 51% of the alumni that were mentored by JA ended up in that field of work. Now, if you're talking about workforce development and creating a pipeline, you bankers probably want to get out there because if you only have to meet with 2 students and 51% of the time they're going to come into the banking industry, isn't that a great investment for the future? So we're looking at what those outcomes were going to be. You know, is it decreased recidivism of individuals coming out of incarceration? Is it to increase the number of students that are graduating? That's not an easy metric to figure out. We've been wrapping our heads around that for about 2 years. But we're getting closer, and we're going to roll that out because it's critically important. Once we define what the outcome change we want to have in moving the needle, then we're going to figure out what's our baseline. Where's our baseline today so that we can measure ourselves? So the impact is one thing, but at the end of the day, Rotarians in this community are problem solvers, and we have to change the outcomes, and we have to measure that outcome to see what our greatest successes are. So with that being said, is there any further questions? Again, can we give this group, again, a round of applause, and also Tom online? And also, I'd be remiss not to thank our president, Jason, moving us through this transition year, and also past president, Jesse Schmidt. I mean, this has been a tremendous year for our club, and thank them both as well for their leadership with this club and in the community.
Well, thank you, Tony, and thank you everybody for being with us today. Rana, Tamian, Dr. Stavum, Matt Paulson, and of course, Mayor Tenhaken and Tony Burke. Thank you for your leadership and partnership on this important initiative. Fellow Rotarians and guests, thank you for joining us today. And if you are a board member, we are going to have a meeting immediately following this meeting in the Skyline Room on the top floor. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.